Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of KHANTEHNT!
KHANTEHNT!
Today we are talking about Made in Abyss, Dawn of the Deep Soul. But first, you should check out our Subscribe Star page where $10 backers get access to bonus episodes.
We cover obscure OVAs that no one talks about, whereas on this channel we only talk about shows that everyone talks about. So go check it out.
And before we get into the show, we have to sell you something.
We here at KHANTEHNT are working with Studio Ghibli to let you know that one of my personal favorite films of all time, The Wind Rises from Hayao Miyazaki, is now available for digital download.
You can get it along with 5 other Ghibli films, Nazca in the Valley of the Wind, Castle in the Sky, Porco Rosso, Arrietty, and The Cat Returns, all available now, and if you order it on Apple TV, that's $20 off, baby.
They're also available on Blu-ray and in stores now, so get on it. These movies are amazing. So make like the wind and rise to the occasion.
Or make like the Nausicaa and of the wind of Ghibli movies available now. Go buy them, everybody. KHANTEHNT!
共に夜明けを見届けましょう。
何が夜明けだ。愛娘の思いをあんな形にしていい理由などあってたまるか。ねえリコ、あんたは進んで。
So, Made in Abyss, we had talked about the show, the TV show, back when it aired as one of our podcast series, predicting at the time, because it was a mildly popular show in the season it was airing, but it seemed like it would take off, and boy, it has. It has become a huge international success. The original show was recompiled into 2 films, and then a 3rd film was released to continue the story, that being the one we just watched. What did you think?
Well, first of all, shout out to Kinema Citrus for continuing to do great work. The quality was, first couple episodes had legitimately Ghibli quality. Yeah. Barring that actual Ghibli quality, it was as good or better than it's ever been in the movie, which you generally expect from a movie experience.
I mean, when this was announced to be continued as a movie series, I was very excited, because the biggest problem with the TV show, in my opinion, had been some mild pacing issues, some parts where it just didn't look or feel as good as it did in other parts, which in fairness, again, like you said, the first few episodes of the show were just stunning quality. So just the thought that we can continue the adventure in a way where we know we're not going to have those same issues anymore is gratifying.
I learned a lot studying Made in Abyss and thinking about the future of anime, and then a lot of other shows coming out these days. And I've been on record as saying that Made in Abyss is the best anime that I've seen, or at least my favorite, that's come out since early 2000s or something, like a Ghost in the Shell or one of those great ones. And it continues to stand at that peak. It's a weird series. It's absolutely not for everybody, but it well deserves the amount of success that it's gotten. It's willing to do things other series are not willing to do. And so when we first did our videos, pacing was a concern. I remember expressly saying that I don't think another season's gonna work for this, because there's an issue that the manga isn't really far enough to do a whole new season, or it would be very awkwardly split up. And for the record, since making those videos, I have become a devout scholar of the work of the manga.
Okay.
And last night, before watching this movie, I caught all the way up. I was just a couple chapters behind. I know everything that's going on. I've read these chapters many times, and I absolutely love Akihito Tsukushi's work on this. And, the anime has the usual strengths of an anime adaptation when done correctly. Music, voice acting, pacing that works well and doesn't get in its way when it's at its best. And the manga has really great art that is pretty well translated into its animated form. Obviously, there's always little bits and pieces there you kind of wish it would keep. The scratchy art style in the manga is really lovely, and it's kind of a shame to see it go. But of course, it's a sacrifice you have to make, and the anime totally captured me. And, if you haven't seen Made in Abyss or anything yet, let me just say, take the time, go watch episodes 1, 2, and 3 of Made in Abyss. Those are a legitimate 10 out of 10 experience, and if you don't like them, I just don't know what to tell you. They're just the greatest anime experience I've had in a very long time. And if that doesn't hype you up for the adventure to follow that we continue in this movie, then I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah. So, Made in Abyss, I would say this movie was pretty much where I thought the plot was going to go based on, like, sort of the suggestions people had made and also based on where things had gone at the end of the first season. Because Made in Abyss is fucked up.
It's incredibly, incredibly fucked up. Yeah. Beyond, I said this, I've made a couple of videos, link around here somewhere to see my videos about Made in Abyss. And to see what I have called like the absolute most fucked up thing I've ever seen in a manga. Hey, maybe I'm sheltered. Maybe there's way worse stuff out there, I'm sure. But it really can't, like theoretically, could not get much worse than what up to this point was the events of the manga that have unbelievably actually been turned into an animated picture. And it rocks my world that Kinema Citrus was like willing to do it and that it survived almost word for word. Looking back, there's a couple of cut scenes, but every piece of thing that you think like, this might be too fucked up, they keep it all. They keep it all.
I mean, like, the point of the show is the abyss is the abyss. You know, when you gaze into the abyss, it gazes back and all that. And, like, it's, you know, obviously going into an abyss is sort of a metaphor for, like, dealing with trauma or dealing with just the world's darkness in general. And that's basically the show presents the darkness that is possible in the world in such a extreme form as to be like clinical about it, where it's just like you can't even spend that much time getting that emotional because it's just so insanely cutthroat that like even though the main characters are children and it's like it's extra scary that it's happening to kids and all that.
I see that's right off the bat. That's one of the things I love about it. In episodes 1, 2, and 3, when you go into the abyss, for those who aren't aware, if you haven't seen, by the way, spoilers for everything that's coming. We're going all out. The fact that normally you'd be like adventurers, like people who are like trained and prepared for this kind of a journey. And Reg, our robot character, obviously is, but Rico is a 10, 11-year-old child, an apprentice cave diver. She is not ready for what's going to go down. And that's made explicit, and she deals with the consequences as they go.
Right. Yeah, it's like the show is always seeming to ask itself, like, okay, well, what's the worst things that people do to each other? And how can we make that even worse through magic, you know? Like, this whole arc focuses on this guy, what's the bad guy's
His name is Bondrewd, the Sovereign of Dawn! Bondrewd the novel, Bondrewd our boy, did nothing wrong?
Oh, well.
Let's find out, shall we?
Marks. Yeah, well, I mean, he's a great villain because the idea of this character is basically that he, just like raises children for the sake of sacrificing them in experiments to the abyss.
That's correct.
And the sacrifices are done in the most like painful, fucked up way imaginable of just like chopping up children and putting them in like turning them into living organ buckets that allow you to go up in the abyss without dying because you've got these little buckets of orphan organs on you.
If you've been following the lore of Made in Abyss, the abyss pulls you down with a curse that allows you to go down, but does not allow you to go up.
Right.
And Bondrewd here, as we saw in the last arc with Mitty and Nanachi, has found ways to mitigate the negative effects of the curse, which explicitly involve putting it off you onto other people.
Right.
So we see in this arc that taken to its most fucked up possible avenue of we take children, chop up all the unnecessary pieces, all their sensory organs that could be used to, like the curse affects your senses in different ways. We don't want that. We got to get rid of those senses. The eyes, the flesh, the tongue, the whatever, the chin, the arms. Get rid of all of it, cram them in a box and put it on top of you. And then you can mitigate the negative side effects of the curse onto them who die and experience utter hell of senseless agony for some amount of time. But Bondrewd and other people would be able to use this to navigate the abyss more safely.
So we already kind of knew all this about this character before we even go into this movie from the show. We have a pretty strong sense of like who he is and what he's about. But in the movie, we're introduced to the whole, mechanism that he's running, basically. And sort of this idea that he does not see all, like, he is kind of like very sincere in his, like, he loves these children. He is trying to, you know, like, in his own weird fucked way, he respects their sacrifice.
Absolutely.
And he treats them like, you know, he basically like
his family.
Yeah,
almost.
He treats them like family. He pampers them. It's just that he also sacrifices and murders them horrifically, you know?
Yeah.
And it's all in the name of these experiments. But like, yeah, it's just this really twisted way of handling people that he has, where it's just like, you know, he doesn't seem to think whether the situation goes like poorly or well, it doesn't matter. He's just like always excited about everything going on. He's
a happy kid. He is
so
a happy
wonderful.
kid. Subarashi.
Subarashi. Like, he's always just like blown away that people can fight against him, and if they could beat him, then he'd be like blown away by that, you know? So it's just like he always has a positive outlook on everything, which makes him that much more scary that like he never... There's nothing you can do other than complete obliteration that would phase this guy and his plans. And complete obliteration is difficult because he is a helmet.
Well, let's talk about that. Okay, we've fully jumped into the deep end of Bondrewd, so I might as well just bring it out now. So first of all, I mean, we'll talk about Prushka and his semi-biological daughter that we can get into what that's about. But so Bondrewd... The thing about Bondrewd is, last night, as I was watching the movie for the first time and just thinking about it, rereading manga chapters, I was looking online at discussion, and, I mean, ideas of this have been around up to this point, but I saw, like, threads, now that the movie's out, of people talking about this concept I said before of Bondrewd did nothing wrong. On its face, that seems utterly ridiculous. And, you know, I saw a thread where a guy was like, guys... fellow internet goers, I see people saying Bondrewd did nothing wrong. I don't understand how you could even think that. Please explain it to me. And a couple of people chimed in and said things like, you've got to look at the world from the perspective that Bondrewd is approaching things from. He is a scientist, and he is on the front lines in the idle front, the lowest point of the abyss, the only unexplored place in the entire world that remains. He is the only man making any progress on research of the curse and trying to make it so that humanity could explore it more safely, as he's trying to do for himself. And yes, it involves human sacrifice, fucking up children, all kinds of horrible things. But he's the only one doing anything to make any progress. And of course, you eventually we learn that he cares about the test subjects that he's doing things to. He shows empathy for our characters. If you watch closely, on your second watching or something, you can note that Bondrewd, and by extension his Umbra Hand minions that are linked to him, they all only act out of self-defense or out of outright benevolence of trying to help people. For example, the first time we meet Umbra Hand, they break out a flamethrower, there's all these dead bodies around. Our instincts are to think, wow, what a monster. What has this person done? And then you wait a minute, oh, turns out those people were just hurt by the abyss itself. This guy is here just to clean up the mess. And there's ominous talk of this area is off limits. Why is it off limits? Because you're literally in danger. They're trying to protect you, abyss goers, from this. That's why they do what they do. So it all comes from a place of trying to make the world better and safer. But of course, the road to hell is paved with good intentions.
I would like to see Bondrewd as the Jeff Bezos of Made in Abyss. You know, like
it's
Jeff Bezos
off.
is always like, look, I'm just trying to lower prices. I'm just trying to make prices lower. If
At
I
what
have
cost?
to make slave labor, then, you know, well, clearly nobody has a problem with it because you're still using it.
There is one crucial difference, though, between anybody like that and Bondrewd, and that is that specifically, we learn halfway through the arc or whatever, that so a white whistle, we get all kinds of bombshells dropped in this arc about the lore of how they're going to progress and all that. The white whistles, the highest ranked cave divers have, are made of human sacrifices. And Bondrewd specifically sacrificed himself, so he's got this relic. There are relics in the abyss that have superhuman abilities. He's able to share his mind over different bodies by possessing them. His original body was sacrificed to make the white whistle that he himself uses. So you could say, of course, that, wow, this guy sacrifices children. That's incredibly fucked up, all that stuff, and that's all absolutely true. But Bondrewd literally killed himself for the sake of his own experiments. So in a sense, you could say that he's just asking other people to live by the exact same principles he himself abides by. He is not a hypocrite. He's just a massive sociopath.
Yeah.
Is that better or worse? That's up to the jury to decide.
Yeah, it was fascinating just watching it with the mentality of like, yeah, I understand. Like, this is the epitome of sociopathy. Is just like, well, everything he's doing makes sense. But it just happens to be evil.
The haunting thing about it, though, is that while he's absolutely a sociopath in the sense that he doesn't care about human life and is totally willing to expend it, including his own, he really cares about the people and like the test subjects, like the girls. The one line of when his first cartridge gets used up during the battle with Reg, and he says, "Oh, there goes like Maria, I forget her name. Right. She wanted to be a princess." Isn't that adorable? He knows the names. He knows the dreams. Right. He knows the personalities of every single human sacrifice that he's making. Yeah. And it frankly reminds me a lot of Ozymandias from Watchmen, who is one of these like elder god tier villains who has motivations that are like, yeah, they kill people, but for the greater good. Now, I don't know if this is for the greater good, what our boy Bondrewd is doing down here.
Right.
In an abstract sense, for the sake of adventure or exploration, that's a little different than preventing nuclear war that could kill way more people than one city. So, pluses and minuses.
It also kind of reminded me of just like treating your farm animals well, like
yeah, sure.
If you raise the cow with love before you slaughter it,
and Prushka is the du jour example,
right? Exactly. Yeah. So he's just a careful farmer, a careful human farmer, and I mean again, the purposes he's using humans for is similar to what you're using animals for if you're slaughtering them, to continue the sustenance of the idea, I guess. But yeah, it's pretty fucked.
Let me ask you this. Did you at any point, as I did, get violently ill while watching these? Because I wept. I felt completely sick and disgusted. And that's how I know that this is a great piece of art. I mean, I felt challenged and fucked with. Yeah. And I think in healthy ways. I don't think it's in fucked up weird ways. I think this is good. Because, there was a sense I had of, as I'm watching Bondrewd describe how the incredibly fucked up things he does to human beings, I kind of felt a tether to Earth, like sever in myself. I felt detached from like life itself. Like I'm experiencing how little and how fragile life is watching this man who's using human life for these kind of like, objectifying purposes of a human life while I care about the person is just like X amount of time I can spend like diving the abyss beyond here. And that shit really fucked me up. When I first read it in the manga years ago and like again now with the music, it hit me way harder now. So which is actually, the anime definitely did its job of enhancing the emotions of the sequence. So
Indeed.
It's a worthy product, no doubt.
In terms of like feeling sick and ill, I mean, I was already in a dark mood going into it, but like my feelings about it are sort of like, well, this is the way things really actually are. Like this already, like, the metaphor is extreme, but like, yeah, our world is like this. Like this is what happens to, like, if you're an orphan kid and you have no purpose other than like someone deciding to put you in this thing, and just do shit with you, it's like, oh, that happens in the real world, like.
I don't want to think about how realistic, like the human trafficking elements of this. I mean, it's another anime, but I think about like the chapter black tape from Yu Yu Hakusho and just Jeffrey Epstein and all this shit.
This is the chapter black tape of anime for sure, but like. As I was watching it, I think that what fucked with me the most was less all the fucked up shit and more the fact that both Petra and Nanachi still ultimately had some...
Prushka, not Petra. This ain't ReZero.
Petra. Yeah, Prushka, whatever.
Prushka.
Prushka and Nanachi both have some level of like respect, adoration, or affection for Bondrewd, and it makes sense from Prushka. Like Prushka has just regarded this as her dad, her sweet dad.
He gave her a lot.
She doesn't really understand how fucked he is. She does kind of come to understand it, but like not really on a level that she could. And ultimately, it seems like her sacrifice was more for Rico. Like, it's even possible that Bondrewd sacrificed her knowing it would produce a white bell for Rico, maybe, or white whistle, rather. Hard to say.
It is hard to say. I think this definitely was very convenient for Rico that this person she happened to make a connection with got turned. Like, okay, let's just say theoretically, different timeline. Prushka did not get turned into a cartridge, and then Rico's got to sit down and have a hard talk with Prushka. Prushka, I'm gonna need you to get in this cartridge. Gonna have to lose all these limbs and organs. You don't need any of those where you're going. So that was pretty lucky. And you know what? That actually ties in well to this other point, which is, like, we're sitting here talking about what a monster Bondrewd is, and he is a monster, no doubt. Right. But every single white whistle committed at least one human sacrifice. Yeah. And that includes Rico. I mean, Rico could take that white whistle and say, human life is too valuable. I refuse to use Prushka in this way. She doesn't do that. No. She chooses to use it for its purpose and continue on. And, like, I don't want to hear any of this explanation. Oh, it's what Prushka would have wanted. Stop. Don't do any of that. You need to stop. There's a line Rico herself says in here. She says straight to Bondrewd, knowing what happened here, she says, I can understand ambition. So, like, I kind of vibe with you, Bondrewd, but this is a bit too far. So she's willing to go pretty far. Maybe not this far, but one human sacrifice? That might be worth it. Yeah. Are we all such saints out here? I don't know.
Well, and that's why, like, when Nanachi, like, has some, even though, like, he's done so much fuck shit to her, she, in the end, has, like, some level of appreciation for him. And it was fascinating even just seeing their relationship, how nice he is to her right away. Because, like, of course you're expecting, in a normal scenario, like, in any other show, you would have been constantly on edge that, like, oh, Nanachi has a history with this guy. He's probably not going to be happy that she ran away. No, he's totally happy
he's super polite.
He's like, oh, you
and
survived?
kind.
That's great. You know, like, oh, I already am torturing your friends, though.
Whoops, he's apologetic. He's like, oh, I'm sorry. If you had said that condition before to not torture and kill your friends, we could have, made a negotiation on that. Sorry, I just got a little carried away with my scientific triumph sounds.
Yeah. So, yeah.
By the way, there is a meme. There is a great meme that I told you as we were watching, where in the manga, there's a certain panel where Bondrewd is reveling in the success of obtaining the blessing of the abyss, which we can talk about a bit more. And the famous sound effect from the page is the sound of scientific triumph. And in the OST, I checked it out, there is a song called The Sound of Scientific Triumph.
Good job,
no
guys.
doubt based on that. And by the way, now's a great time to give a shout out to my boy, Kevin Penkin, who is the sound designer, or the composer for Made in Abyss, the movie here, Shield Hero, a bunch of Kinema Citrus stuff, Tower of God he did, and a personal follower of me on Twitter. So I'd just like to give a shout out to Kevin. Great job. You're kicking ass out there.
The music was great in this film,
it
was in the show.
There's so much usage of vocal tracks, of like oohs and ahs, and all that shit hits me so good. And I'd like to put out one further appeal to our viewing audience, or anyone else who's listening. Please, someone help me message me on Twitter at bestestguyever. I need a copy of the original soundtrack in its beautiful green vinyl. They were sold out when I tried to get one. Contact me on Twitter and I will buy it from you. Please. I just want to own it. Kevin, hook me up.
Yeah,
that's
maybe he can.
Maybe he can, Kevin. Let me know. I love the fucking music so much in all of Made in Abyss. Oh, and I was just going to say, I have listened to the soundtrack over and over and over and over for the 3 years since it's come out. And I do not think there is a soundtrack that I have loved as much as this in like a non-soundtrack specific show like a Shampoo or a Bebop since like Ghost in the Shell, which has an amazing soundtrack. Right. And Made in Abyss is right up there with it.
Yeah, so I guess like the part that fucked with me the most in this movie is just the emotions of like the fact that this guy is such a bad guy but has any kind of redeeming qualities at all and doesn't even die.
He lives and is allowed to continue, Chit.
Yeah.
Which is a little irresponsible from our heroes, but they're not really fucking that good of people anyway.
No.
They are users themselves, and they will, you know.
Well, and that's kind of the thing. Like, anybody who goes into the abyss is going to be, you're going to have to become this to live. Like, the deeper you go, the harder it is to survive, the more tenuous the difference between an enemy and a friend becomes.
Indeed,
you know?
indeed.
And I think that's kind of what the overall feel of this arc is. Like, Bondrewd simultaneously is like final boss level bad guy, and like they fight him for most of the fucking movie. Like,
well, a large chunk of it,
dude for a lot, like, because he keeps coming back, other forms, and it stays fresh. Like,
yeah.
all the fights. I would say the only one that was like maybe a little much was in that, like, they're fighting their way up the hole, and Reg has this new technique where he, like, shoots his arm out a whole lot and then, like, spins it around him, and it's like a drill that lets him climb by, like, spinning himself. It was kind of confusing how he does that.
That is a great... Well, okay, you know, on the subject of fights, first of all, you're absolutely right, and when I was reading the manga before, I was like, what the hell is going on here? What is being implied by the benefit of just swooshing your armband around yourself? I guess it's doing something, because it seems to be working, even though we haven't talked about this, but we have learned that his body is very susceptible to some of the weapons that Bondrewd has.
Yeah.
But I was really worried that this would go full DBZ and Made in Abyss, like, would be ruined when I was reading this back in the day, and that this was going to be Made in Abyss from now on. I'm happy to report, for people who are wondering where Made in Abyss goes from now, this does not ruin Made in Abyss, and it does not stay like this forever. But this really was, like, the first real big fight, like the first, like, DBZ type fight of the story. And, you know, that gets to a larger point. I was going to say that it's interesting to note that up to this point, Bondrewd is the first, like, real enemy who's trying to kill them or do horrible things to them actively for a purpose. Every villain up to this point has either been testing them or just trying to prepare them for what comes, and the true enemy is just the abyss itself.
Right.
And the specific villains and, like, creatures that live in the abyss. And everything bad that's happened to them has really just been as a lack of knowledge, a lack of preparedness, or a lack of skill to deal with these threats that come from the abyss.
And just simply their desire to do this at all, which is
Agreed.
the danger in the beginning. But yeah, like,
and I think that's fascinating. See, when this story started, I remember when we first talked about it, I was absolutely enthralled by the concept of the abyss itself. And like, whoa, this is like what we're doing this entire story, just going down one hole?
Right.
How much character can you possibly give a fucking hole? And like the critters that live in there.
Yeah.
I'm happy to report a lot. It each has its own character.
There's some cool, fucked, crazy fauna in this where, like, at the start, we've got these dead bodies that are being kept alive by the insects that are living inside of them.
You've got living corpses.
They, like, feed the corpses themselves and then, like, live inside of them. And they keep them alive, but they can basically just lay there and have worms in
I'm trying to think if there's any other place in this story arc where sacrificing lives for the sake of progress or other things was relevant. It's almost like there's a thematic link here, perhaps.
Right.
That can't be right. That can't be right.
And they later try to infect Bondrewd with those parasites.
That's true, and it works. It works as far as we know. He just dies of other stuff also, like getting crushed by a rock, for example.
Yeah. So, yeah, there was like some kind of other fucked up monster or concept. It's always just cool, the ideas of how the abyss works. How
about the weird fish that they just make sashimi out of and they rub to get the slime out of? I mean, we were saying, hey, not to shit on ReZero too much, but I had to say, even a few minutes in, as they just go fishing and eat it, I was like, this is 1,000,000,000 times better than watching any episode of ReZero in the history of ReZero, because I care, and this is a new world, and it's interesting. And I don't know, people out there think like, oh, Nate, you just think that you hate all anime now and you're too old. I'm not too old. No one on the planet is too old to enjoy fucking Made in Abyss. No one in the world is ready for Made in Abyss, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, it can be a lot. I will say of this movie, I think the impact was slightly diminished by the fact that, like, the second that Prushka showed up, my immediate thought was something really fucked is going to happen to that kid.
You said it. You said it.
Immediately I was like, she's too happy. This is not okay. She's going to have something bad happen. I wasn't anticipating the way things would play out, though. Just the idea that Bondrewd would be so, like, unexpectedly personable and polite. The idea that, like, he would literally tell Nanachi, like, oh, like, you don't want me to hurt your friends? Okay. I mean, sorry, I already started, but, like...
Yeah.
It was just such an interesting way that all the interactions play out during this that I wasn't expecting. So, like, yes, the fucked things happened to the kid exactly the way that I expected them to, but the context of how that happened and how everyone reacted to it was what made it interesting and not just exactly what I thought was going to happen.
That's good. I remember, again, when I was reading the manga, I also thought, like, they really throw Prushka at you fast and expect you to care really quickly. But exactly as you said, the way it goes and the level to which it goes was enough for me to care. And, like, watching it back, I mean, this is, like, the third time I've experienced this particular story, and it is highly effective, and it works every time.
And it was also really the white whistle at the end is the only thing I would consider, like, a real spoiler of this arc. Because, like, going into it, I knew she was going to die. As the situation played out, I was kind of surprised that... Because first, like, it seems like they've already killed Bondrewd. So at first you're shocked that they killed him because, oh, I guess nothing's going to happen to her. Oh, wait. He's immediately resurrected. Immediately they put her under and you know she's gone. But then, like, you get... Only after you find out that she's already dead do you finally get, like, the flashback explaining her whole past and how he actually raised her. And it was interesting because I was like, well, surely this isn't trying to emotional gut punch me because she's already dead. And, like, there's no sense in telling me about this character now until the white whistle comes out. And you're like, oh,
this is the whole point. She's been prepared as, frankly, another cast member who just ain't going to have a lot of lines from here on out. Sorry, sis, but I mean, she will be with them the whole time. Isn't that sweet? So there's one other aspect I wanted to touch on, which comes from a lot of these kind of stories that have, like, this story is heavily focused on what will the end be? What is at the bottom of the abyss? What's the mystery that we're building to? And, as a manga reader who knows some of the stuff that happens next, I wanted to give people at least, like, a little bit of assuaging of any fears that they might have. Not even that, like, what I've seen so far. So what I've seen next has been good, but just about, like, where the story is going. And I wanted to read, to do that, a little excerpt from the end of, or the developer commentary, as it were, from the first volume here. And this is what Mr. Tsukushi had to say when, like, developing Made in Abyss as a concept from the start. It was, I'd originally thought up the story for a doujinshi and had intended for it to be a picture book with a bit of pop-up action. So when I set out to take that idea and make it into a serialized manga, I started by creating an overarching plot that would be suitable for the medium. According to that plan, the content of the first volume was supposed to fit into 3 chapters, however my plans fell apart one after another. I thought I'd have no problem handling by myself have turned out to be really tough. I think there's a typo, but that's what it says. Plus, the storyboards take a lot of time to create. My editor keeps calling something blah, 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 a bunch of stuff. And then he says, however, I have been able to write and illustrate in a way I want, so I'm managing somehow. Hopefully, I'll be able to write and illustrate the story all the way to its end. I plan on making it more and more exciting. I read all that to make the point that Akihito here is clearly writing Made in Abyss to be an entertaining story, and anyone with any illusions, this goes out to the One Piece readers out there. One Piece, or the bottom of the abyss, will not be the greatest philosophical answer to all of Earth's questions and explain everything. It is a story designed to entertain, and as long as it does that, I personally will be totally stoked. And I think with Rito's continuing quest to find her mom, to find out, like, what's at the bottom of what is the cause of the curse, and all the stuff that's been set up, the whole world that we've built off of that premise. Like, I just love being immersed in it and just getting an answer, whatever it might be. It could be there's a literal old man just chanting a spell that made this whole thing happen. If we get there and, like, a cool fight happens, I'll be happy. So just an appeal to the doomers out there for these kind of series. Have a little faith. Have a little faith that our boy Tsukushi, Mr. Man, is going to deliver some hot fire when we get to the bottom. And based on how things have been going, I have very strong expectations he's going to do so.
This movie was such a well-constructed just arc. Like, looking at it in the face of the series, I feel similarly to the Konosuba movie that we watched, where it was like, man, they really found a just right arc that would just fit into a movie, continue the story, but feel complete. You know, like this did not feel like season 2, part 1.
No, not at all.
It feels
not
like
at
a
all.
total story. And like, it's interesting to think that, like, I don't know how much the series continues to be kind of arc structured like that, but like, if so, I would love for there to be more movies and just keep doing it this way, you know?
Incidentally, on that front, there is an announcement that the story will continue. Kinema Citrus is doing more, at least I believe it was them. It has not been announced if it's in movie form, if it's in anime form. My guess is that it's going to be anime based on the way like the next arc of the story goes, but I don't know. And the other weird thing is that next arc really is not finished yet in the manga. It's up to volume 9 and chapter 55. That story is definitely not complete. So even if they do like a season of an anime, like 13 episodes or something, they can only do so much. And then I think that we'll be in for a wait, and like an unsatisfying wait, unlike the masterful ending to season 1 with that fucking song by my boy Kevin, Tomorrow. I listen to that song all the time. It is the banger. Play it in our ears right now. Bum, 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 bum. It's so fucking good. And the movie ends on another perfect cliffhanger as we go into the next zone. Like, I would recommend they honestly take a couple years off and just don't do anything and let like a couple more volumes come out before they continue the story. And if they do that, like the next arc will definitely have like a satisfying conclusion. We've got all these new environments and stuff. So don't rush it, guys. And don't make like a half-assed project that you can't finish. Kind of like they did with like the One Punch Man season 1. Everybody's 10 out of 10. Everybody loves it. Season 2 was uglier and like half told a story. And that sucked. And people didn't like it. Don't do that. Just wait. If it's not too late, just pause. Let them finish the story and continue it later. That's my recommendation.
Well, is that all you got to say about the...
Yeah, that's all I've got to say. But let me just emphasize, read the manga, folks. I love this manga, and it is fantastic. It's not for everybody. It's got some weird degeneracy going on, no doubt about it.
The movie did not skimp on the degeneracy.
It did not, and I love it for one.
No.
It's a feature, not a bug. And it is kind of endearing, as we said in our previous discussions about how fucked up this world is. They're not afraid to show piss tubes connected to Reg's dick, oozing out robo-piss.
Also, the line where Prushka, when she is informed of what a penis is, calls it a
papa pole.
A papa pole.
Now, what could be implied by that, I wonder?
Deeply concerning.
I choose to believe the best of Bondrewd, and that he would have no ill intentions whatsoever. He wouldn't let us down. Real point, he's a scientist. What's the use of fucking your daughter? There's no knowledge to be acquired there.
She probably just saw
he couldn't
it.
have.
She probably just saw it and asked what it was.
Not to get too weird.
And he called it a papa pole.
I think when some of us are young, you see your parents naked, they can use weird euphemisms or something. It happens. It happens. I'm not weird, you're weird.
Yep. Well, that's all for our take on Made in Abyss, the third movie.
What would you rate it, Digi? What would you give it?
I'd probably give it like a strong 8.
I think I would give it a strong 9. I fucking love Made in Abyss. Go watch it, you piece of shit. You're doing nothing with your life as is. It's a better use of whatever you're doing. Go check it out. Meet my boy, the Sovereign of Dawn. God, I love him so much. He's such a fucking awesome character. He's so fucked up, but in a cool, unique way. God, I fucking love it. Yeah!
Yeah!
See you next time on KHANTENT, everybody. KHANTENT! Bye!